Douglas Murray touches on the significant and often contentious issues of education, culture, and national identity in modern Britain. His deep dive into these topics reveals underlying tensions and challenges that Britain faces today, especially in the context of cultural integration and maintaining a cohesive national identity. Let's take a listen.
I want to speak to Douglas Murray. Kevin.
It doesn't surprise me that Christians say they're being marginalised or they're being not given the status that they want to have, because it's quite right, they shouldn't have that status. In Britain, forgetting about the Muslim issue, in Britain there are schools tomorrow who will open and teach their children about creationism. They will teach their children that evolution is a lie and a conspiracy. That is nonsense. And me as a taxpayer, I'm funding that. That's obnoxious.
Well, let's get back to the state schools. Let's get back to this particular issue and the alleged extremism that has been going on. Not the Trojan horse context. We don't want to conflate two issues here. But Douglas Murray, you know, 95% of children in a particular area are of the Muslim faith. You were complaining in your article in The Spectator that in one primary school music was banned. That's kind of another issue, but raffles and tombolas were banned. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to encourage Muslim children to gamble? What's your problem with that? It should reflect the nature of the school.
So first they came for the tombolas.
For what?
Look, the problem
gambling
going on
wrong
here,
in those communities.
The problem going on here is that we're in the middle of a debate. I mean, the nation is going through something very substantial change, and I think that what we've been discussing in recent days and what we've been discussing this morning kind of reflects it. People, and it comes back to the British values thing as well. If you said to people until very recently, what is Britain, what are British values, you'd have got a fairly clear reply along the lines of, you know, a Protestant Christian country, we have institutions of church and state and monarchy and so on, which represent the country. As one of the results of mass immigration of recent decades, there has been a substantial change in the country. All sorts of good things have come from that, and some negatives have. But one of the things that has come from it is this confusion about what it is we are. We want to be open and tolerant, we want people to be able to practice their faiths, we want people to be able to express themselves and live the lives they want to live. What we're finding it very hard to do at the moment, and I mean the French secular example has already come up, is to work out where our lines are drawn as a nation, because they're not clear at the moment.
It's impossible to draw those lines, isn't it?
It may prove impossible. It may be that we do something like the French state did and try to draw very clear lines. That's what you've heard in recent days. There's a bit of it already this morning, that, you know, there's a problem with some schools that are actually, you know, state secular schools that happen to have had...
How bad are these problems?
The problems exposed in Sir Michael Wolfshaw's report are pretty serious, and there's more to come.
Really, what's so serious in the report?
I think, for instance, I mean, Wolfshaw himself says that these children are at risk of cultural isolation. There have been findings of children, for instance, being taught in assembly to chant anti-Christian.
But none of the kids were spoken to.
But
did you know that none of the pupils in that school were spoken to during that so-called investigation?
And there are many all-white schools.
The teachers were not spoken to either. You come to Stamford Hill, where I live, we're not far away from our house. We have a particular community, the Jewish community, who live in a very isolated way. Nobody says anything about them. I have no problem with that. Hold on, I have no problem with that. If that's what they want to do, that's their choice. But we don't create a big fuss over the Jewish communities, especially that particular community living in that way.
Wait, you need to differentiate.
Why cause a fuss over a report that was made out of a hoax letter,
You acknowledge there are issues.
I did say in the beginning.
Rabbi Laura.
First of all, you're talking about faith schools. We're talking about state schools.
Yes,
that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Second thing,
There are many of the schools are funded by the state.
I'm not going to interrupt me. Stop. The second thing is what should be taught in schools. Actually, I think you should be teaching about religions. So that doesn't mean you have to believe. But if we don't know what other people believe, we won't have the literacy to challenge the idea of what you mentioned, you used your language of the true faith.
But it's not just...
So I would say there are faiths out there, and Britain is about acknowledging truths of faith. And the third thing is about what you tolerate. The third thing is about what we tolerate. I don't think that everything goes, and I think that if there is incitement to hatred, to racial hatred, or gender hatred, or sexually restrict that.
Okay, but Douglas Murray... Don't worry, we've got a lot of time. Douglas Murray, you can't force people to believe things. You can't shoehorn people into a particular Douglas Murray-shaped
I have no intention.
David Cameron-shaped Britishness.
No.
Can you?
No, I mean, this is part of the problem. By the way, just very quickly on this matter of this, I mean, I do think that one of the things...
But address that issue about...
Okay, can I just mention first, one of the interesting things that's come up in recent days and weeks, I think, over this whole Trojan horse business, is I think that some Muslims in this country, in particular a lot of Muslim spokespeople, a lot of Muslim groups have been furious about these revelations and are now denying them. They're still denying them. And this is something like happened in the Catholic Church over the paedophilia scandal. People just don't want to admit it. They don't want dirty laundry to be aired in public. They generally think that, and that's why there's still this denial even now. There's an official report by Sir Michael Wilshaw. It's found some very disturbing things. Some people still think that it don't exist.
Is this the same Sir Michael Wilshaw who just did a U-turn on what Gov did or didn't tell him?
But Miriam, the thing, either you think this has all been, do you think this has all been made up?
I think
do you think it's all been made up?
What I actually know is that there are serious governance issues, there have been internal administrative issues, whether there are issues of extremism, which is what you're peddling, and what in fact the publication you work for is peddling by publishing one of the worst covers in this country that I have ever seen, suggesting that young children are vehicles for extremism and terrorism. You should be ashamed to be even associated.
Can I just give, this is a very good example of the problem. Miriam, you are a very prominent spokesperson. You're a voice. You're a very prominent convert to Islam. You have a voice.
I don't call myself a convert.
Okay,
so don't call me one.
whatever it is you want to call yourself. You have a voice. Here are some problems that are coming up, which have been exposed, and they're being taught by some extremist Muslims. Why, in this debate, you first of all deny that that is going on, and secondly, think the problem is a spectator cover cartoon.
I've never denied that there are issues.
I do not understand.
On these three,
the problem is not the spectator cover.
I think the issue is you're
Miriam
trying
first.
to
I want to speak to Daniel Hannan. Miriam, respond to that.
You're trying to suggest what you're trying to do is support the Gove's agenda here, which is there are absolutely issues within these schools, and I think everyone, including the Hands Off Birmingham School campaign and others, have acknowledged that there are certain people who should even stand down as a consequence of some of the revelations in this report and reports that will come. The issue, however, is trying to rebrand this as an issue of extremism in order to expand this idea of extremism being non-violent ideas.
Or indeed Nick Griffin had been asked to come along and speak in a school.
Neither of the equivalents of those two individuals were invited to speak in these schools.
Well, I'm sorry, Shady Al-Sulaiman is a man who's called... What?
His views are worse than...
What are his views?
Well, anyone who supports Al-Qaeda in public, anyone who supports the ideology of Al-Qaeda...
Who says he supports
anyone
Al-Qaeda?
Who supports the
I'm not defending him, but who says...
He's not being stoned to death.
He should...
Murray begins by addressing the controversial teaching of creationism in some British state schools, funded by taxpayers. This raises questions about the appropriateness of such teachings in a secular education system. The debate is not just about creationism versus evolution, but about the broader implications of religious doctrines being taught in schools that are supposed to provide a scientifically grounded education. According to a 2014 YouGov poll, only 15% of Britons believe creationism should be taught in schools, indicating that the majority support the teaching of evolution, reflecting a broader public consensus on this issue. The discussion then shifts to cultural clashes in schools, such as the banning of local traditions like raffles in predominantly Muslim schools. This points to the broader debate about British values and national identity. Murray argues that traditional British values, which have historically been linked to Protestant Christianity and institutional structures like the church and monarchy, are being challenged by mass immigration and the introduction of diverse cultures. This has caused confusion and sometimes friction as Britain struggles to integrate these cultures while maintaining its own identity. Murray suggests that defining clear lines for national identity in Britain, similar to the French secular model, could be a potential solution. However, he acknowledges the challenges inherent in this approach. The French model of laïcité, secularism, strictly separates religion from public life, which has led to its own set of challenges and controversies. Adopting such a model in Britain would require careful consideration and a delicate balance to respect religious freedoms while promoting a unified national identity. One of the most concerning issues Murray highlights is the cultural isolation and potential for extremist teachings in some state secular schools. Reports of anti-Christian chants and other disturbing practices in these schools have raised alarm. The 2015 Birmingham Trojan horse scandal, where some schools were accused of promoting hardline Islamic values, is a stark example. The government's investigation found evidence of a coordinated effort to impose an Islamist ethos in several schools, highlighting the risks of cultural isolation and the infiltration of extremist ideologies. Murray draws a comparison with the Jewish community, noting that isolated Jewish communities are not scrutinized in the same way as Muslim communities. He calls for consistency in addressing cultural practices across different communities. This comparison is important because it underscores the need for a balanced approach to integration and cultural practices. Ensuring that all communities adhere to the same standards of education and social integration is crucial for fostering a cohesive society. Teaching about various religions in schools without endorsing specific beliefs is essential for promoting understanding and tolerance. Murray argues that addressing incitement to hatred while maintaining a cohesive national identity should be a priority. The 2011 census revealed that over 33 million people in England and Wales identified as Christian, while nearly 2.7 million identified as Muslim. This diversity underscores the importance of a balanced religious education that fosters mutual respect and understanding. Murray draws parallels to the Catholic Church's initial denial of the pedophilia scandal, suggesting that some people similarly deny the existence of extremist teachings in certain schools. Despite official reports finding disturbing practices, there remains a level of denial that impedes addressing the root issues. This comparison highlights the dangers of denial and the importance of acknowledging and addressing problems head-on. Murray's concerns about cultural isolation and the potential for extremist teachings in schools are echoed by several investigations and reports. Sirs, the 2014 Trojan Horse affair in Birmingham, where it was revealed that certain schools were promoting hardline Islamic beliefs, is a case in point. The government-commissioned Clark report found that there was a sustained, coordinated agenda to impose segregationist attitudes and practices of a hardline, politicized strain of Sunni Islam. This situation underscores the risks associated with cultural isolation and the need for vigilant oversight to ensure that all schools adhere to inclusive and secular educational standards. Moreover, the comparison with isolated Jewish communities and the need for consistency in addressing cultural practices can be supported by looking at the broader context of religious and cultural integration.